Everyone, this is O.G.Starwars, and today we are reviewing for Tuesday's lore review Survivor's Quest by Timothy Zahn here. And this is basically in the timeline of 22 ABY after the Battle of Yavin. And this also is like, I would say a sequel in a sense to Outbound Flight. And if you're following the EU or Legends book club on YouTube and Twitter, we are also reading the Outbound Flight. So reading this, and I've already read Outbound Flight a couple of times already. So reviewing Outbound Flight along with Survivor's Quest basically just, lends more to the overall story for Outbound Flight and the lore that went from, Obi-Wan Kenobi and Anakin and Thrawn all the way to Survivor's Quest with 3 years after Luke and Mara Jade's marriage. So this happens 3 years. So they're somewhat newlyweds in a sense that they, at this time, they really haven't had a chance to celebrate their marriage together because they were still detaching from prior engagements. That's including mainly for Mara Jade detaching from Talon Card's organization, and she's a Jedi Knight now in this time frame as well. So this book, I recommend you pick it up and read, especially if you're a big fan of Mara Jade and Luke Skywalker. This is their own spin-off story, just like Tatooine Ghost is Han and Leia's spin-off book together. This is their spin-off book. So in the book, we have Mara Jade, Luke Skywalker. We have the Chiss ascendancy, like Form B. Basically, that's his core name. And we also have characters from the Outbound Flight are actually descendants or relatives of the characters. And we have Dean Gensler. And we also have, of course, Talon Card. And we also hear about George Cardass. And so this again reflects all the way back to then, and also reflects all the way through like the Thrawn trilogy and the duology, the Hand of Thrawn duology. And so it's a great continuity, like I said before. So basically, a message was intercepted by an employee of Talon Card, and this employee does have a big role in this book as well. And his name is Dean Gensler. And that message was for Luke and Mara Jade regarding the remains of Outbound Flight being discovered by the Chiss ascendancy. So the Chiss extends an invitation for the Jedi delegates to meet and return Outbound Flight remains to them. Basically, the Outbound Flight, again, go read the book as well. The Jedi Order was highly involved with that, and I'm not going to share any spoilers about Outbound Flight, but this is, like I said, is a great, like, I guess you could say semi-sequel to the Outbound Flight. And the Chiss diplomatic ship, the Chaff Envoy, heads the mission to where the Outbound Grave is at. And the Outbound Grave is in the unknown regions where the Chiss, world is and all that. That's a part of the galaxy that has not been fully explored by, the New Republic and by those in, known space in, the galaxy. And so that place is basically the Redoubt, and that has like a cluster of planets, asteroids and all, and so it's a very dangerous part of space. And again, unknown regions, basically it's unknown, it's not safe. There was no hyperdrive lanes mapped out, coordinated out for that region, again because it was never explored. And Luke and Mara join the voyage as well as like I said, Dean Gensler and the Chiss, and also, a faction of species that claim to be Goron, and that's Barish, and his faction of this almost extinct race or group of species called the Garoon, I believe it's called. And this species was known to be saved by Thrawn during the Outbound Flight against the Vagari. And so we'll get more into that as well. And so again, this mission is led by the Chiss Aristocra, Chaff Orm Bintrano. So, just names very unique and how they pronounce it. So hopefully I did justice to that. And Luke Skywalker is very much intrigued about this invitation, and he wants to, find out more information about the Jedi Order of the past during the Old Republic, and he, learn how the Jedi, basically formed the Order, and what else they can find with the lore according to the Jedi and teachings, training material, all that. He's hoping to find, something like that aboard, since this outbound flight, was also head up by the Jedi Order as well. So him and Mara go on this as also a discovery type mission as well for the Jedi Order. And so I'm going to read you something here. I don't have an Audible on this. There's no Audible, but there is audio on it. So I didn't download the audio. But I want to read this because in the past lore, before this book was written, and this book basically came out after the prequel trilogy, and all the prequel information started coming out to basically expound the lore on that era. So this book basically, got to use all the goods and all the lore that was established in that time era. And so in the past, we believe that Luke Skywalker didn't really know a lot about the rules, I guess you can say, or the codes that the Jedi followed during the Old Republic time. But this book basically shows, or, gives us a sense that he understood. And what I'm getting at is that he marries Mara, and so we are led to believe that he didn't know that the Jedi are frowned upon marriage with other Jedi, that it wasn't a part of the order and a part of the rules or code established. But in this book, it is established that he knew. So I'm going to read this this little portion of the book here. But it was different with Luke. He had been a Jedi when he'd asked Mara to marry him. True, their chances of survival at the time had been somewhat uncertain, but that hadn't affected the sincerity of his proposal or the depth of his feelings towards her. So now he's referring back to the second book in the duology, Visions of the Future, when they are, flooded in under the caverns of the Hand of Thrawn. And despite these occasional twings, he'd certainly found peace in his decision and in their subsequent marriage. Could Yoda have been wrong about how Jedi relationships were supposed to work? That was the easiest answer, but that would mean the entire order had been wrong about it. That didn't seem likely unless on some level, all of them had lost the ability to hear the Force clearly. That's very interesting because we learned in the PT that Plagueis too, but basically Palpatine was blind, putting this, clouding the Jedi in the Force. So using dark Force, use to cloud the Jedi and their judgment, and they're able to see or feel the Force correctly, I guess you could say, as Mace Windu had stated. Could that particular dictum have ended with the fall of the particular group then? That's, Luke contemplating to himself. Yoda had also said something about the Force having been brought back into balance, though he'd been somewhat vague about the details. Could this have rendered the part of the Jedi Code no longer applicable? So we have this little thing and this little thought process going on in Luke's mind about the Jedi Order of the past, and contemplating what he's doing, what he's teaching is correct, right? What happened to the Jedi Order of the past? Their code, does it apply to them now? What does the balance mean according to the new Jedi Order? And towards the end of this book, he also comes to the conclusion that, that doesn't apply to the new order now that he's creating. So basically, he went and corrected or amended some things that was a downfall, I guess you can say, with the Jedi Order of the Old Republic. So we have Dean Gensler aboard the Chaff the Chaff envoy, and he's impersonating a New Republic ambassador to get on this mission. And he has his own reasons why he wants to be on this mission. And so Luke and Mara suspect his lies, I guess you can say. And so they confront Gensler about it. And what we find out is Gensler admits he's there for personal reasons. And basically, his sister was a Jedi on the flight. Her name was Lorana Gensler. And so we have that there. So there's a lot of stuff going on. There's a lot of little backstories going on that are bringing all these people in this mission, led by the Chiss. And again, so read the book. I'm giving a breakdown. I hopefully it doesn't spoil it too much for you guys. And another group of people on there is the Empire of the Hand, referring back to the duology, the Thrawn duology. And so that's Parsk's people, and it's led by Chak Fel, who is the son of Baron Fel, and he is also leading the 501st. So there's an honorary 501st. The 501st was the well-known, soldiers, or not soldiers, but yeah, soldiers are battalion of Anakin or Darth Vader during the Empire and during the fall of the Old Republic, and even during the Clone Wars. So they were very revered for being such a good group of soldiers, or the 501st, the battalion. And so they are asked by Parsk, to go and protect the Jedi. And he still wants Mara Jade to join the Empire of the Hand, or the Hand of Thrawn. And so she's conflicted in this book. She's basically thinking she has survivor's remorse, because out of the Empire, she's the only one that truly survives. And so she's coming to terms with this, and she's trying to figure out her place. She's a Jedi now, and she's married now. And so there's a lot of this little internal conflict going on with her, and Luke is trying to support her the best way he knows how in this book. And so she has to fight with this inner struggle and this inner fear and doubt with what's going on with her, facing all this going on, facing the past of the Empire, Thrawn, and then asking to join the Empire of the Hand. And so this is another reason to get into the book, is to see and hear what she's contemplating, what she's thinking, and knowing that she's still in doubt, and she's still struggling with her past. And so basically there's a few attempted sabotages on this Chaff envoy that the 501st and Fel try to investigate as well, of fire, and then sabotage worms, I don't have the name in front of me, that are placed that go inside the systems and basically wreak havoc on the wiring and all that in ships. And so we have them there. And when Luke and Mara first get on the Chaff envoy, he is faced with someone trying to injure him or test his skills. And when the conclusion comes to that, when Luke finally confronts Formby, he says that they were in disbelief of the Jedi's reflexes and abilities, and so they were testing Luke. So I thought that was interesting as well. The Chaff envoy arrives at the Outbound flight wreckage, and they do discover eventually that there are survivors on there. So people survived it, and I will show a picture of what the Outbound flight looks like, how it's constructed. And so there's 6 dreadnought around a core, where the core has the power and all the material that is needed for such a flight of passengers to survive on their mission. So I will share that somewhere in the screen here. So Gensler reveals now that his mission was facilitated by George Cardass. And again, I did refer back to George Cardass, and he is in the Outbound flight as well. And so he is coming, and he met with Formby regarding the Outbound flight and what's really said to happen with it, and that's why he was sending a message out to Luke and all that. And so that unfolds to why George Cardass is involved with this particular mission. So, and also George Cardass tells Gensler, tongue twister, he was trying to fulfill a promise made long ago. And Gensler learned that his sister had sacrificed herself to save the Outbound flight. So when Luke and Mara and the rest of the passengers from the Choff Envoy mission board the Outbound flight, they decide to explore after they break free, because they did get entrapped in the lifts, or the elevators in the lifts. They end up getting out, and they decide to explore each one of the dreadnoughts. So they're listed D1, D2, D3, D4, D5, D6. So they go to D1, which is the command center, and they discover, basically there's nothing but bones, barely hardly evidence to what, happened to those in the wreckage, other than the bones and maybe some material that, necklaces and stuff. And so my point I'm getting at is that they discover some bones on D1, and they discovered the bone, and within the bones there was a lightsaber and also a necklace with an amethyst on there. So they were thinking it was Sabayoth, and but later they find out it is really Lorana's, and that she gave her life and sacrificed herself to protect those on board. And when we get more into the story with the passenger survivors on the Outbound flight, they don't put the Jedi in high esteem. So they don't like the Jedi. So anybody that has Force abilities are put into Quarantine 3, I guess it's called, where they basically put them on their own, and they have to basically survive on their own. And so anybody that is said to be Force sensitive from real little and show the Jedi powers or Jedi traits are then sent off away from the rest of the colony, that the survivor of the colony of survivors. So I thought that was very interesting. And looking more into the book, they thought the Jedi betrayed him, and because the Jedi basically goes out and puts himself in the forefront. And so many people who did not witness any of the deeds of the Jedi thought they just left them. And again, read Outbound Flight for more information on all that as well. And then the Garoons revealed themselves really as the Vagari, and they underestimate the Jedi. And so that's where the advantage of Luke and Mara have, because they've never encountered Jedi before. They didn't realize their powers or their abilities and what they're capable of. And so they're bent on vengeance from what happened during the Outbound flight. So they're here to get revenge against the Jedi and against others, against the Chiss as well. And the Chiss can't do anything. They can't provoke a battle. They have to be provoked. That's their rules, their I guess you could say code, and what they go by. So they can't do anything until they are provoked, until the aggressor provokes them into defending themselves. And so the Garoon, or basically the Vagari, has some kind of illusion in their ship to make it look like they only had just several of their people, and their group was very, very small, but they were really hiding their warriors. And so by the time everybody's on Outbound flight, they already infiltrated the Chaff envoy, and take over that, or basically cripple all the ships and leave it, and head into Outbound flight. And so Luke, Mara, along with the 501st and the Chiss, are now battling, fighting for their survival and their life, and the survival of the colony of survivors of the Outbound flight. And then we also discover during this time frame that Formby, who is injured now, admits to using the Outbound flight's mission to lure the Vagari to attack. So he reveals that he used the mission to have the Vagari provoke them so that they can then attack them, because according to the Chiss, they can't provoke, or they can't just basically attack or start a fight on their own. And so we have that, and it's very intriguing because when you see the Vagari, or when you visualize the Vagari and how they're dressed, they have the wolf kills, or this furry little like robe around, and they were said to be extinct species, the wolf kills. But basically they are suspended animation, and so once the ring is taken off them, they come back to life. And so that was part of their use, their tools to attack. And among the worms that they set loose in the ships as well. And we have Luke and Mara battling the Vagari, protecting the people. Also, there is a Force user, a little girl Force user that from the beginning, is a pivotal part of the story. And she helps Luke survive in one of the lifter shafts as well. And she is in fear, and her mom is in fear for her life because she doesn't want her to go to quarantine as well. And Luke really wants to take her back and train her. So I thought that was very, very interesting as well. And a little subplot to follow as well, because we get a further analysis of the old Jedi Order versus the new, what Luke did versus what the Order did in the past, what he's corrected versus what was made particularly a downfall to the Jedi, or at least to some of the Jedi, including Anakin Skywalker. And that is not allowing marriages or relationships. And so we see the son of the Chosen One correcting that error in the code as well. And so I'm going to close here with this. There's so much to just like digest and reveal and share. There's so many little plot stories in here, like including the people, the colony of survivors on the Outbound flight, why they don't want to go back to the New Republic, why they don't care for the Jedi. And then we have like the Force users that live on there, and they live in fear to being discovered. And so we have the Emily girl. Was it Emily? Well, we have the little girl who doesn't want to be quarantined, and basically outcasted from the colony as well, and her mom living in fear. And so there's a conclusion to that as well. I'm not going to reveal it. And Gensler, we see him come to a peaceful conclusion about his own sister. There is conflict between him and how his parents perceived her, because they always wanted their kids to be a part of the Jedi Order, be Jedi as well. They worked at the Jedi Temple at one point until their daughter got admitted into the Order and passed all the tests to become a Jedi, and then they were let go. So there's a lot of heavy stories, heavy lore in here regarding the Jedi of the old versus Jedi of the new, Luke and Mara's marriage, Mara contemplating on returning back to a small faction of the Empire for a greater good she may see. So we have this conflict here, and in the end it comes to a nice conclusion. And this is also a precursor to the new Jedi Order series when we meet the Yuuzhan Vong. So thank you again for listening. I hope you guys pick up this book. Again, it's a great book. I enjoyed the read. This is like my 4th time reading it since it came out. And so you guys have a great day, and may the Force be with you.